Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. It's me, your adult son, just drinking out of my Universal koozie cup here. God, I love that company. Love Paramount, too, because they've given us all these amazing Transformers films. Honestly, I could put the first one in, and that one's watchable. It's watchable. Now, you know that I know that we all know how good of a job I'm doing at saving up for that new car that we've been talking about. But it's just really, really difficult to do that when the summer blockbuster movie season is so good right now. How could I not be going to the movies all the time? It's the priorities, Mom and Dad. I saw Wake Up, Rise and Shine Beast, it's Transformers time, and Mr. Flash. I'm not the biggest diehard Transformers fan. I guess there were a lot of diehard Transformer fans in the theater. I swear to God, this was like their end game. Reveals were happening and character moments were happening. The crowd that I saw the movie with, they were cheering and they were eating it right up. I was kind of falling asleep during the movie. I had just gotten off of work, I think, that day, and I was just I was a sleepy guy. But when Bumblebee showed back up into the movie, yeah, he's in the beginning and then he leaves for a long time. I only care about Bumblebee, but he leaves for a long time in the movie, and then when he comes back, that's when I woke up. Oh, well, I didn't fall asleep. I saw everything, but that's when I emotionally woke back up. I was like, oh, Bumblebee's in the movie. I care about it now. Rise and Shine Transformers, It's Beast Time, tells the story of Noah. Wow, I actually remembered the main character's name. His name was Noah. I don't find myself remembering the human character names, except for Sam Witwicky, who's famously played by Shia LaBeouf. I had no idea Pete Davidson was in this movie until I got in the theater, and then I cannot watch a movie unless I know who all the voices are. I didn't pull my phone out like a degenerate, but I have a pretty good ear, and I pieced together that it was Pete Davidson. Bottom line, Transformers movies are what they are. After I saw Bumblebee, I thought that there was maybe hope, because that one is basically just E.T. and the Iron Giant combined into one movie, but it actually had heart, and the characters actually were characters, and I felt emotion for those characters, and that's all that I ask, is that you get me to feel something, feel anything for these human characters, and I rarely do. I'm an inventor. I don't care about Mark Wahlberg and his daughter and her weird boyfriend and their Romeo and Juliet relationship. It is so weird. Michael Bay has never been the one for creating really sincere characters, ones that you can really connect with on an emotional level. If he's producing the movie and you get a director that does understand human emotion, then yeah, you're gonna have a fun time like Bumblebee was. Cause now I'm looking at Amy Adams. You'll have a fun time with Bumblebee because it's so simple. It is literally the simplest movie. You don't have to love it. It's so basic in nature that you can't help but at least connect to it a little bit. I don't know. Bumblebee. It's not a complicated movie, but just I'm losing track here. What I'm really trying to say is that Bumblebee is the best Transformers movie, and it's the only one that's actually a good movie. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about bees. I'm here to talk about beasts and how they're rising, and it's their time to rise. The beasts actually played somewhat of a part compared to the one with the dinosaurs, I think. Age of Extinction. His gun is a face! Ooh! I remember thinking, okay, so we're gonna see some robot dinosaurs for a good chunk of the movie, and then they didn't show up until the very end. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about dinosaurs. This is the one I don't think I've actually seen, or maybe I got drunk and I fell asleep watching it. The one with the Knights and Anthony Hopkins. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about Anthony Hopkins. I'm here to talk about beasts, and honestly, I think the fact that I'm getting so sidetracked just kind of goes to show my feelings towards this movie. I kind of just felt a little numb. That's the word that I keep thinking in my head when I think about this movie, is I just felt kind of nothing. The fighting is good, and it's set in the 90s, and it's got a cool 90s soundtrack, and the actors are having a fun time. There's more humanity to these characters than in the earlier movies. It's cool that we finally get to see Unicron I guess, I don't know, I don't care about Transformers, but I guess Unicron is he's a big old guy, he's a big old ball. It's not like Galactus from Fantastic Four where he's just a big cloud of nothing and disappointment. I'm sure diehard Transformers fans were really loving, that stuff. I feel like I'm going on too long about Transformers because I'm the least qualified person to go deep into the lore of Transformers. Rise of the Beast Wars, on the other hand, it starts out like that simple, small Bumblebee story where it's just about a human character. Uh-oh, there's Transformers, and now how's that gonna mix in? And then the movie turns into your standard MacGuffin searching. We gotta go to this place to find a thing and do this place to do a thing. At the beginning, they establish that the movie's gonna be about Noah and his brother and possibly the relationship with him and Mirage and how the three of them are. I wish the movie had been about them. I know that people get annoyed when child actors aren't good actors. It's just annoying when any actor isn't a good actor, but people really take a shit on kids for some reason when they're not good actors. My suspicions were right from the trailer, where the last shot is just this really well choreographed, well animated, you can read everything that's going on, but it's in this very flat, gray backdrop that looks just like the last half hour or 45 minutes of Endgame. Oh, also, I just have to mention, because there were a lot of Transformer fans apparently in the theater, whenever the female Transformers showed up, somebody kept yelling that they were quote-unquote bad as hell, or bad AF. I don't know what that means, because I guess I'm old now. My brother says that I'm basically 30, which is so great. Wake Up Mr. Beast, It's Transformer Time was fun. If you go see it with a crowd in a full theater, it'll just kind of sweep you up a little bit and make you feel a little bit more excited, I guess. I don't know. I just felt kind of tired. The movie kind of felt a little tired to me. I didn't really like it as much as Bumblebee. I think I'd rather watch that one again instead. Your mileage may vary for the other movie that I saw this week, because if I'm gonna be honest, I'm having a little difficulty putting down my thoughts on it, just because I've only seen it once. These are just my initial impressions of the film. This isn't like some definitive thing. I saw The Flash. Bare bones, I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. I understand that there was a question mark at the end of there. It is a good movie. I think the one part that I really just didn't like was the very ending. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't like people that are involved, you don't have to. If you don't want to go see this movie, don't see it. Don't see it then. I did in fact go to see it because a lot of people worked on this movie, and that work shouldn't go unseen. Like some other projects in the DC universe that will never be seen, and were probably very, very not terrible. This isn't coincidence, because comic book stories do this all the time. The Flash weirdly has a lot of things in common with Across the Spider-Verse and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to, some degree. And honestly, as a somewhat mild fan of The Flash, it feels like it's about time that we got the Flash movie, considering we've had all of these multiverse stories and time travel things going on in comic book movies these days, when it was the Flash who had that original Flash of Two Worlds stories that literally created the multiverse as a comic book story device. If not for that original story, we wouldn't have stuff like Multiverse of Madness or Across the Spider-Verse. Thanks, Carmine Infantino, for trying to mess with the writers. And now here we are with this Flash movie, where it does have a lot of that multiverse stuff, but I will say that it keeps it simple by keeping it a straightforward time travel story. They said that they didn't want to directly do Flashpoint, but they take a lot of stuff from Flashpoint, and that's not a bad thing, because I haven't read too many Flash stories. A lot of people have read Flashpoint, and that is the big Flash story that a lot of people do think about, and especially with all this multiverse stuff. I will say that the elements they took from it benefit the movie. I don't want to say that we haven't seen this kind of story, because there have been 9 full seasons of The Flash TV show, and only one of those seasons was good. The first one, please fight me on it, The only good seasons of the CW DC shows were Arrow seasons 1 and 2, and The Flash season 1, and like most of Legends of Tomorrow, you know, and Supergirl had some good stuff. Superman and Lois is very good. I'm getting sidetracked. At the end of the day, the movie is about characters and the choices that they make. You know, Barry isn't this perfect superhero. He's not even really like that quippy of a superhero. He's more really just socially awkward. Like, he straight up just does not know how to talk to people. I think that the performance that Ezra Miller gives is really professional. I think that goes for the rest of the cast. From the Flash stories that I've read, I think all 3 or 4 of them, Barry Allen always kind of seems like your standard blonde-haired, blue-eyed hero guy. He works for the police department to some capacity. He's just always kind of running late, you know, and he's kind of fumbling around that way, but he always seems like he's pretty confident, you know, to some extent. Whereas in this movie, they paint a picture of a guy who he's trying to keep it all together, like he wants things to go one direction, but his life just kind of keeps shooting into a different direction. With the use of his super speed powers, he tries to take matters into his hands and you know, correct the course of his life into a different direction. I think there's a solid enough arc for Barry. However, if you don't really like elements of Barry's character or things about anything that have to do with Barry being on screen, if you don't like that, you might really not like this movie, because it's a lot of him interacting with a younger version of himself. On paper, the script, it's some good stuff. The interactions between Barry and younger Barry are a lot of fun. They have a really good dynamic between them. It's really fun seeing a version of Barry that just literally does not care about anything and only thinks about himself. We've only ever seen Barry be this guy who's trying to right the wrongs of the system, fix a few wrongs in his life. We get to see a version of Barry where everything, he doesn't have a care in the world. And to see that version of Barry with super speed powers was a lot of fun. And to see this kind of not older, but seasoned Barry, to see that Barry who's been at it for a little bit, having to train a super immature version of yourself, I definitely wouldn't want to do that myself. So I found that element of the story very relatable. I really loved the interactions between him and his mom and his dad, and that just kind of made it even more tragic when certain things happen in the story. You know, and they're taking a lot of elements from Flashpoint, and if you've read Flashpoint, you know kind of how that story goes. They said that they weren't going to do Flashpoint 1-to-1, and I was expecting that going in. I had some suspicions that certain characters, maybe villains, were going to be in the story, but I kind of held my reservations. I wasn't expecting too much. And I did eventually like the direction that it went, because it kept it about Barry and his journey. That benefited the movie, kind of subverting my expectations a little bit. I really like that this movie takes the alternate universe mechanic from Into the Spider-Verse and Multiverse of Madness and only applies it to this version of the DC universe, because now we get to see just kind of one alternate universe. It's not about infinite worlds for the most part. For a good majority of the movie, they keep it simple and have it about Barry coming to an alternate universe version of the DCEU where Superman is, you know, he maybe didn't make it to Earth, and maybe Batman's a little bit older, and it's specific to this one. Because if I'm gonna be honest, I really just don't like a lot of the choices that were made in those initial DC films for this universe. I'm not a big fan of the creative decisions that Zack Snyder made, despite the fact that the Snyder Cut is as watchable as it is and is actually kind of good. Despite that, doesn't make the early DC films good. Those are still weird and bad and not really my cup of tea. Now that superhero movies are doing the whole multiverse thing, you know, Elseworld stories, you know, seeing different interpretations and a lot of cameos, the worst parts of these newer superhero properties is when they only rely on those cameos to be crowd-pleasing, and Marvel has definitely been guilty of that, and DC, and in this movie specifically, they are very much guilty of that. Although it feels like DC had to release this movie more out of obligation than a real passion for what they're making. You can tell that the director is having a lot of fun and he's passionate about the project, and it's all up there on screen. It feels like this movie in particular is at the end of some weird journey that started with, you know, that Force Awakens trailer where Han Solo shows up and, you know, we're like, oh my god, Han Solo's back. Seeing Michael Keaton come back was amazing. It was awesome. You know, Michael Keaton is Batman. But it did feel a lot like Chewie We're Home. At the same time, they didn't waste it. You know, Michael Keaton is still a fantastic actor, so there's no way that he would get involved with the project unless they were going to do something with the character. If all he was going to come back for was a great send-off, he still got it kind of thing, you know what? Read the channel title, you know? And there was a lot of him in the movie. It wasn't just some cameo. You know, he becomes part of this little team that they're putting together, and he becomes a fun kind of part of the dynamic of the team, and it's not wasted. And that also goes for that goes for Supergirl too. They did a really good job with Supergirl. They really captured that kind of bitterness that she has, the fact that she's not from Earth and she wasn't raised on Earth, you know, and so when she gets to Earth, she's a little bit more bitter towards it with the way that they treat her, and just everything about her is amazing. Michael Shannon is in the movie for like 30 seconds. Overall, you know, story, good, you know, script, good, and you know, the performance is good, and the actors are pretty good, you know, and overall, this is just, it's a good superhero movie, and that's all I wanted, and that's what I got. But I would be lying if there weren't things that did bother me. It's a little weird that now we finally have a Flash movie, but the best slow-mo scene to still ever be put in a superhero movie is the Quicksilver scene from Days of Future Past. It's still the best one. They stick to a lot of this universe's visuals with the slow-mo and a lot of CGI. I don't really like the way that they have, you know, him running and he's kind of doing this slow-mo thing. I love, you know, the stretching, and I love the way that Ezra Miller brings a physicality to the role. I don't know how much of it was him and how much of it was like stunt doubles or CGI, but they really make the Flash feel agile, especially when he's having to jump from thing to thing in slow motion. Not that he wasn't fast enough, he literally breaks time in this movie. If you're not a big fan of CG or DC movies and the way they look, I don't think you're gonna like this movie. One could argue that it looks unfinished. One could argue that it looks cartoonish and silly. When the two Barrys are on screen, you can usually tell which one is the fake Barry, but they do a good enough job to where I'm not like distracted. I'm still in the story. I'm still immersed in the characters and what's going on. I'm not trying to be like that asshole that looks for all the strings and shit, but when you watch enough movies with CGI, your eye kind of becomes trained to what's real and what isn't real, and in these DC movies, it's pretty easy to tell what's real and what isn't real. There's specifically these sequences that people are getting really upset about, where there's a lot of CG, and because Barry's in the Speed Force and he's looking at certain things in the Speed Force, and the CG is very apparent. It didn't really bother me. Again, read the title of the channel, but I could understand why it could be distracting for a lot of people. It's kind of expected with these modern blockbusters where, you know, you've got characters standing in front of backdrops and landscapes that just aren't there, and you can clearly see the outline around them. This glow, this fog that's like specifically around the character, and you can just tell that they're not there. There's a good amount of CG in this movie to the point where they use it as a tool. It's not, I mean, it doesn't look amazing. I don't know. It feels like maybe I'm trying to justify it a little bit too much, but it didn't distract me. It's not the best use of CG in a movie. There's so many better examples of CG being used better, but it's a superhero movie. I'm not getting too mad at it because of some shoddy CG here and there. The only time I would say that I was really ever disappointed in the movie or not really feeling it or just kind of about the movie were some of those fan servicey cameos and fan servicey moments. And look, there are some things in this movie that I was not expecting as a DC fan, because my dad is this weird hardcore DC fan where he loves Kevin Smith and he loves Adam West Batman and he loves the Nick Cage Superman story. He loves listening to Kevin Smith tell that story. Dad, I know you love that story. To get to see references to things like really, really deep cuts like that, of course I got excited and I laughed, and it was fun to see those things. Spoiler alert, Nick Cage is in the movie, and that was probably the one reference or fan servicey moment that I was okay buying into. I can't tell why yet, but that was the only one that I was like okay with. The one right at the very end of the movie. You'll know what I'm talking about. That was really stupid. And I have bigger gripes about the ending, but specifically the note that the movie ends on, 2 thumbs down. Just a stinky way to end your movie. And I really, the more I think about it, the more I just didn't like it. When they start wrapping things up, you know, it's your standard wrap up, you know, falling action after the climax, you know, we're wrapping things up. Everybody's getting their happy endings, you know, and it's fine, you know, that's what you expect from your superhero movie. You know, not to bring up Flashpoint again, but they said that they weren't doing one-to-one Flashpoint, and that's fine. But they did take a lot of elements from that story in terms of story structure, the way Flashpoint ends, you know, not specifically what the characters are talking about, the emotional note that the comic book ends on, I think is one of the best endings to a story that I've ever seen, not just in comic books, but when I think about the ending to Flashpoint, and if you've read the story, you know what I'm talking about. It's a moment between Flash and Batman when the final battle is going down, and, you know, the hero is fighting the villain, and we're getting, you know, everything solved with that whole debacle. It's pretty satisfying. And based on everything the movie had been presenting to me beforehand, I thought, you know, that the movie would kind of end on a similar sincere note, the way Flashpoint does. You know, again, it doesn't have to be one-to-one, but I was, you know, I've read the story. I am a fan of these characters in these comics. So, you know, and I'm not saying that the movie's bad because it didn't meet my expectations. I think even if it wasn't between The Flash and Batman like it is in the comics, I think the movie could have ended on a bit more of a sincere, touching note, because it tries to end on a joke. I didn't laugh. I didn't think it was that funny. Maybe my dad liked it. Maybe your dad liked it. I've got the feeling that for every nerdy dad out there, this is gonna be their favorite movie of the year. I texted my dad afterward because I was thinking about him, and I was getting a little emotional during the movie because Michael Keaton is his Batman, and my dad always talks about what it was like being roughly my age, going to see the first Batman with Michael Keaton and seeing him on screen for the first time, and how big of a moment that was for him as a fan of the character. That was like for me seeing Tobey Maguire for the first time, and how that affected me in the course of my life. I didn't get to see it with my dad. Dad, I miss you. Happy Father's Day. And happy Father's Day to all the super dads out there and bat dads. Maybe I'll watch the Lego Batman movie if I'm feeling like watching a dad be a good dad. Instead of saving up for a new car, I spent money on going to the movies and eating food before the movies and at the movies. So if I have money for that new car later this year, we'll just have to wait and see. But if the movies keep coming out and are this good, because the blockbuster movies have been pretty good this year, and if they keep coming out at such a consistent rate, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get that new car just because of how good these movies are. So, ooh, that rhymed, unintentional. So we'll end it there. Have a great day.